folks, this is Rodney Urbona, your host for the No Excuses Show, and I am with my special guest, Adam Miller. He has a podcast, Legacy Over Likes, and we're going to get into it because he's got some great topics. How are you, Adam?
Man, I can't complain much. It's good to see your face. I haven't seen you in a little while.
Yeah, it's great. It's always good to catch up, and it's amazing
Yeah.
how visual helps the conversation more than just over the phone. Isn't that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah,
before
things
we
are
got on
great.
camera, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said things are great. Just
Good.
new visions, new recommendations, new, thoughts that come through my head pretty much every day. You can't turn them off.
That's awesome. That shows you're that creative person, and sure the world needs more creativity. It's always evolving, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's so great. You know, before we got on camera, we were talking about a few things, and one thing I thought was great about your thoughts and how your podcast wants to help others is people are failing at selflessness and being over codependent on other thoughts. Let's jump into that. You know,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
see this a lot, and I think, in my opinion, of course, yours is going to matter more, is that people don't understand this early enough. What do you think?
Man, that's true. I got to say, I think I've always had it to some degree, but I've also had, because when you talk about selflessness and you talk about codependency, they're both sides of the coin in one conversation. And so, you know, I was firstborn and I always wanted to help my brothers, and they were getting in trouble and whatnot. And in the same sense, self-preservation was never a thought, but had I understood that early on, I'd have been in a much better situation in life at the current moment.
And to what degree do you think?
I'd be a billionaire for sure,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. And
You
what do
know,
you think prohibit you being a billionaire because of not understanding this sooner?
well, the leverage thing was never a thought. I was a chef for 28 years and I was being leveraged, but I was so excited about the job that I was doing that the leverage conversation never came up. Of course, when I was younger, I have three younger brothers, and my first father, he would come around and then he'd be gone. So I really didn't have any education on what I should be doing in life. So it's kind of like raised by wolves in the neighborhood, doing what I wanted to do versus what I should be considering.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, so many people within the US just stay there, and we'll get to the rest of the world another time. There's a lot of fathers, absentee fathers, and finally, statistics are coming out showing how it really hampers the growth of men and how to handle a lot of concepts of our society. And you said it perfectly, how you experienced that firsthand. And being a big brother is not the easiest job. I mean, my big brother was like a father to me. You know, my father worked
Mhm.
6 days a week, and that one day off, he did his best to do something with us. But those 6 days are a lot of days, right?
Yeah, and if you know what, and if you don't know what you don't know, as they say,
Right.
I'm not a quitter, so I'll just keep messing it up until I get to the place where I'm like, okay, it wasn't so great, but we got through it, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And that trial and error really causes a lot of stress in our lives to some degree because there's more error than there is success. And that kind of puts your mind in a point where I'm always failing versus I'm succeeding. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I used to have an identity when I had my podcast Fail Forward, and that identity got shaken at one point where I was like, I don't see the point of having drab conversations with people. Let's start shedding some light on where we can go as humanity and bigger ideas like the guys that are out there that have the big ideas right now. We're no different. I think everybody has their unique, you know, genius that they can bring to the world. And, that was a thing in my life where I just really didn't find it. Did I enjoy cooking for a long time? Did I enjoy playing music from a young age? Yeah, I enjoyed all those things, but I really couldn't choose, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And with this unfortunate codependency on other people's thoughts, how do you feel it's, I'm going to use a harsh word, dilapidating people's livelihood?
Hmm. Man, we are such a nation of half percenters, meaning there's 0.5% of people that are going after their dreams and have some sort of purpose. And of that 0.5%, a very small 0.5% of that are actually getting it. And they're actually going through the downfalls, the pitfalls of that faster than the average person. I would tell
Wow,
you, I would tell you that some of these people that are experiencing that, they're not good people either. The people at the top aren't always good,
true,
you know?
true. And that's spread across, like you said, our environment is, what do you think, is
Yeah.
part of the cause, correct?
Yeah. Every avenue, because, you know, my wife said this the other day, for Warren Buffett, I would go to him for investment advice, but not for workout advice.
True,
Right. And
true.
so,
Yeah, that brings up a good point.
yeah, he's older and he's still winning, but he can see the end in his life course. And every individual, I don't care if you're a man or woman, is going to sit there and they're going to acknowledge what they haven't done in their lifetime, and they're going to have some sort of remorse towards that.
Right,
You know?
right. And when it comes to life, what do you think is the biggest remorse? Do you think it's work-life balance? Do you think it's not following their dreams because they're, again, more codependent of other people's thoughts? Oh, you shouldn't do that. And then they fall back into
Yeah.
doing nothing.
Well, they say we have two ears and a mouth, right? And that's set up so that we can listen, right? But we have to also combat, and regulate what comes in that we actually put into our belief system. Because if I looked at some of the people in my life that were, villains, let's say, when I was younger, I believe some of the stuff they said. And had I had better tools, I probably would have been in a different situation. You hear people get hurt all
Yeah,
the time. I was never in that situation where I got hurt. I'm like, nah, I don't like it here. I'm out of here. You know,
right, right. And what do you think we're missing in our life tools?
and you know, Pastor Paul Benjamin, he wrote a book called No Child Without a Dad. And that really impacted me. It was about the Trayvon Martin shooting that you
Okay.
probably heard about. And it was 500 feet in front of the doorstep. I met him randomly in Las Vegas at a sound stage where I was doing audiovisual. And I had a conversation with him. And I really liked what he was talking about. The unit of the home is broken because it's a two-way street. But imagine people had the integrity and the gumption to push forward and never give up on their family no matter what. For instance, my wife and I have non-negotiable. There's no divorce ever going to be on the table. And we said that from the time that we met, and we were both hurt by past, relationships that didn't work out. It takes a lot from you.
Sure, sure. You bring up a good point when it comes to family, and not just family, but friends, integrity.
Mm-hmm.
We all say it, but what's the percentage that there's actually action in that word?
You know, it's interesting because you actually have to push yourself to develop a core value system, and then you have to believe in it. And the pushing yourself to believe isn't very easy. But when you adopted your core values and they're non-negotiables, then things change for you, right? I'm not
Right.
going to forsake anybody else. I'm not going to steal from them. You know, some of my core values that are non-written are called the 10 commandments.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then my other core values, you know, are accountability, boldness, honesty, humility, okay, passion, persistence, and trust. Those are things that's kind of like sits on the rule, treat people how you want to be treated, you
Right.
know? And I learned from my grandparents and, you know, people like that. And they didn't have this same reoccurring theme that, you know, the people that are 60 and 70 years old right now had. They had the world where I think my grandparents, my great grandparents, they just had each other.
True. It's a
That
different
was it.
life back then, right?
That was, I got to make a decision to stay together, and that's it. That's the
Yeah.
first decision, you know?
And that's not an easy one. I mean, the divorce rate is pretty much equal to the marriage rate, right? It's around 50% or even maybe higher. I
Yeah.
don't recall it, it's a conversation that many of us know of. And
Yeah.
when you break it down to, like you said, the core values and not stealing, and people might say, what does not stealing have to do with of maintaining a marriage? It has a lot. You're stealing other person's values by not respecting them, correct?
Right. And so, is this an explicit podcast or more of a vanilla conversation? I'll,
Any
I'll,
way you
I'll,
want to do it. It's your
I'll say it,
conversation. I'm just
I'll
here to
say
ask
it,
questions. That's the fun of my part.
I'll say it like this. So, if you're going to steal from me, you may as well lay with my wife also. That's how it feels to me. I don't believe there's any black and white between them. They're all, those 10 commandments are all serious in their own way.
Yes,
Right.
very.
So I can see the divorce thing being super tragic right now because we're talking about, let's talk about millennials for a second, you know, and even I call them product X or whatever after that is they grew up in more of the technology age versus the industrial age, and therefore there was way more options for them to go sideways. And if they didn't have a good parental unit, which I told you my story a little bit. I know there's other
Hmm.
people with the same story that didn't have two parents. And I look at that and I go, you know what? It's tragic in itself. And the younger generation has zero of that. I mean, maybe 5%, maybe 5% togetherness, you know?
And what do
So
you
how
think's
does
causing that? Because that's in my opinion also would be it's very close to that percentage. But what do you think is causing that small percentage to be more prevalent?
it's mental capacity and um, you know, their belief systems. Unfortunately, they don't have belief systems.
Good point.
The automatic gratitude of, okay, I got this thing. And for somebody like me, that thing might not matter whatsoever, but for this person, it's everything. In a grand scheme of thought in the industrial age and before that, none of those things were even important,
True.
right? You know, you got AI.
Yes. Right. Right.
AI, is it important? Yeah, it's important for ease of use. And but when it comes down to it, you know, Elon Musk, I heard this. He said surgeons aren't going to be available soon because of the,
Interesting.
you know, like we're going to go with the odds here. Like we're going to have AI, you know, do open heart surgery on this person, because the odds of them surviving, and then also the other variables, not getting sued in the process, XYZ, it eliminates that part.
Right.
And the odds are the
Right.
odds. We didn't make that one. It's got to get better. That's what we're talking
Right.
about. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you bring up another good topic too about person's values. I see another situation at hand is where people commit crimes because I'm not caught. And until I'm caught, it's not a crime.
Yeah. That's that's a core value issue. That's a belief
Right.
issue. It goes right back to that scenario where it's somebody saying, "Hey, well, this person took my stuff. It's okay for me to kill them."
Right. Right.
They thought so. That might be my
So,
gateway.
yes, I
Consider.
agree. Yeah, that's so true, Adam. So where do you think we are, and how do we turn this back? We know it's a slow moving boat, right? As the cliche is, it's not going to turn around overnight. No one person's going to say a sentence, and everybody's going to just automatically change that mindset of selflessness and giving.
Yeah.
Um, and the big part of what I love about your title is just what it stands for, right? Legacy. I think if people looked at themselves and said, what am I leaving behind? Because everybody's going to leave something behind. That in itself, I would hope, it would change people. They wouldn't need somebody if they looked inside and just said, what's my legacy? What
Right.
about that?
Yeah. I think the older timers, they used to have this right. I look at something that impacted me as a kid. I don't know how it impacted me. It just did. The Muscular Dystrophy Association, Jerry Lewis. And
Jerry Lewis telethon.
that happened here in Vegas. And in it made me think. I've created some things surrounding that are going to be coming out soon enough based on that simple idea. And for me, I think it was ask and ye shall receive on that, right?
Right,
And imagine this scenario, and I'm going to answer your question, but the reality is that there's all these loan programs out there for people that want to go to school. There's so many problems with that. You got to qualify for this. There's only so many people that can qualify for it. You can't, everybody can't be a D1 athlete. That's why D2, D3, JUCO and other things are available, right? The reality is that we're missing the entire concept. And I think Jerry Lewis had it right when he said, "Hey, you know what? Like, these people need help." That was the simplicity behind it. And
right,
so if you couple that with asking you shall receive, then there can be some truth to getting help from just random people,
right.
right? I was at an event last night, Jonathan Shuttlesworth. He's a pastor out of Pittsburgh. And the guy's anointed, man. And he just said, when somebody comes at you and says, this is the way things are, like church leaders, and he says, when they come at you and say, this is the dematerialization of people, 99% of people accept that. I don't accept that. I don't
Yeah.
accept that. And Jonathan Shuttlesworth, he's like, you have to rage. Okay, this is my words, not his. You have to rage against that machine, because the reality is that the devil let you do anything that he wants to you and your family if you let him.
True
And
that.
so I say to the young people, I say this. I say, look, you know what? Stop listening. Watch the devil go by. Watch these things that happen to other people, and let every thought be captive, and use that as a turning point in your life so that you can see and demand better of yourself and your circle, right? Hey, I'm not
Right,
hanging out. I like he's sideways, right?
right.
not trying to get busted, is the common sense platform that everybody needs, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I went off on a little tangent there, but the reality
No,
is that
it was perfect. It was perfect. Actually, that statement, demand better of yourself and others in your circle, is such a lost environment today. And I think that that statement in itself is very powerful in a sense where if everybody, not just one or two, even people who are doing well, sometimes
right.
we let that one wrong person in that breaks up the fabric that you've created that gave you that really good circle. So it's an important reminder that this is a constant. This is not create a great circle and expect it to stay that way. And people
No.
within your circle can go bad. I mean, look at what we're, like you said, not to bring up the news, but Prince, whatever his name in England, is now in
Right.
jail because of giving up government documents to a non-government person. And I won't name
I'm a,
names because it
I'm
just, I want to stay on topic with what you said, which is great. I'm sorry.
shenanigans. That's all it is. If we break it
Yep.
all the way, it's something that you shouldn't have done. Right?
Yeah. Make it that simple, right? Something you shouldn't have done.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to always be consequences, but in this case, where uh, your belief in your ability to sway somebody left or right is more important to you than doing good for humanity, that's where it's game over. It's game over.
Right. Right.
Think about
And it
any
goes,
stock guy who's ever
and,
gone to prison for promoting a stock.
right. Exactly.
Movies
What good
about
was that to humanity? None. And then again, is that your legacy? Going back to the title.
it. Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is the way I look at it is I'm going to use my core values, which came from scripture and the 10 commandments to make my best choices every single day. Am I going to fail? Yeah, sometimes I'll fail and I'll it what comes up for me is Luke 6:42. I can point at somebody else and say, "Hey, you know what? Like look what you're doing. That's not right." And then I better be looking right back at myself and going, can I fact check this and be okay? Because what happens after that is if that is true, then there's scripture that says go to your brother with a problem in private, and that's man or woman. And if he doesn't
Yes,
listen, bring back a witness. If he doesn't listen yet, bring back the church. So those two things just walk down the street together, in my opinion.
I
You know,
agree. Absolutely. Adam, I think we should leave it there because it's leaving myself, and I'm sure it'll leave others with that lingering thought. And
yeah,
that's part of our purpose. And of course, we're going to continue with other podcasts together. I
yeah,
want to
for
thank
sure.
you for today. It's been awesome. We got
Yeah,
a lot of great information from you, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your life and what you've been through. Everybody, this is your host, Rodney Arbona for the No Excuses Show. We'll see you again.